welcome to the City Club of Portland Friday Forum. City Club is where we bring civic-minded people together to make Portland and Oregon a better place for everyone to live, work, and play. I'm Karen Curvin, president of City Club, and I would like to welcome members and guests alike, those of you who join us today at Sentinel Hotel, and those of you listening on OPB Radio or watching on Portland Community Media. The generous support of City Club's corporate and media partners ensures we put on the state's best civic programs week after week. I'd like to thank our media partner, Oregon Business Magazine. Our current Friday Forum sponsors are Bank of the Cascades, Family Care Health Plans, Legacy Health, Russell Fellow Properties, The Standard, and Stoll Reeves. We are grateful for your support and commitment to City Club's mission. Please join me in a warm round of applause for all of them. I'm excited to announce that today is the launch of our Civic Scholars Program, an initiative to expand opportunities for high school students to more deeply engage in Portland's civic issues, bringing civic education out of the classroom and into the community. We are joined by students from Parkrose High School, the students will spend time with Mayor Charlie Hales after his State of the City speech. The Civic Scholars Program is made possible by generous support of the Collins Foundation, Comcast Internet Essentials, the Multnomah Bar Foundation, the Classroom Law Project, and Sun Community Schools. The program wouldn't have launched without the support of AmeriCorps Vista and, in particular, our Civic Scholars Coordinator, Amanda Shore. Thank you all. Next week, we will have a conversation about the state of Oregon's economic recovery. You can learn more about City Club events, purchase tickets, and become a member on our website, pdxcityclub.org. As always, we will be live tweeting today's program. You can follow along and join the conversation using the hashtag SOTC15. After our program, I will facilitate a question and answer session with Mayor Hales. The first 3 questions will come from our civic scholars. Members, please come to the microphone to ask your question. For all of our audience members, please locate the index cards on the center of your tables and write your questions on them during the forum. Hold your cards up high and City Club staff will collect those prior to the start of the Q&A. And now for our program. Charlie Hales spent 10 years on the Portland City Council, followed by 10 years in the private sector, and has just finished 2 years as Portland's mayor. He is originally from Virginia. He obtained a degree in political theory from the University of Virginia, and in 1979 aimed his Plymouth Valiant westward and drove to Portland. Charlie worked here, started a family here, and got involved in the neighborhoods here, which led to his 1992 run for city council. He knocked on an estimated 20,000 doors to find out if the issues and concerns he heard from residents matched his own issues and concerns, and it turned out they did. He was elected to the council 3 times. He spent much of that time shaping the goals and accomplishments of the Transportation Bureau and the Parks Bureau. His accomplishments at Transportation included expansion of light rail, streetcar development, and safe bicycle routes. His accomplishments at Parks included the first successful bond measure in half a century, which led to building or renovating 110 parks in every area of the city, including most notably East Portland. Charlie left office in 2002 to work for a nationally known engineering firm, which let him see how other cities were adopting the Portland model of light rail and streetcar. He returned to public office in January 2013, employing the same technique of knocking on doors throughout the city to gauge the interests and concerns of Portlanders. Today, Mayor Hales lives in Southeast Portland with his wife Nancy and their cat Bogart. Charlie comes before us today to talk about the past 2 years as the city climbed out of the worst deficit in its history and the community at large recovered from the Great Recession. With these troubles largely behind us, the mayor will talk today about his commitment and passion for neighborhoods, for economic opportunity, and for public safety. Please join me in welcoming Portland Mayor Charlie Hales with the 2015 State of the City Address.
Thank you. I love music. One of my earliest memories as a child was the sound of my mother's piano playing, drifting up to my bedroom. I was a geeky high school band kid. I'm no longer a kid. I still love music, and there's probably some of the geeky part left. My favorite piece of music in all the world is Aaron Copland's Appalachian Spring. And the heart of that piece is an old Shaker hymn that goes like this. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find, sorry, I'll do that again. 'Tis the gift to be simple, 'tis the gift to be free, 'tis the gift to come down where we ought to be. And when we find ourselves in the place just right, it will be in the valley of love and delight. Now you... Now you probably know now why I didn't major in music, but I think you know how I feel. And that is, I want to start this speech by thanking Nancy and Carolyn and Gavin and all of our family, and all of you, and the citizens of Portland, and the great city employees of the city of Portland for giving me a gift to be the mayor of such a much-loved place, and a place that is so delightful to us all. Thank you for this opportunity to serve you. Thank you, City Club, for this civic tradition where we review and reflect and, yes, raise our sights for the better days we want ahead. Thank you, Karen Curvin and Greg McPherson, for your leadership of this great club. Thank you, Sam Adams, as you leave this club a stronger, more vital organization and go to the World Resources Institute and take great ideas to scale in other cities. Thank you, Sam. As Karen said, I see three really important priorities for our future: neighborhoods, economic opportunity, and public safety. First, a little bit about where we've been and how we got here. As she said, when I was sworn in 2013, we faced a slow local economic recovery and a huge city budget deficit. We had a police reform effort that was aspirational, but not yet operational. My first job as your mayor was to work with our council and get our fiscal house in order. We cut budgets in general fund bureaus by about 5% and clamped down on spending. We paid down debt with the first new money that came into our hands. We maintained the city's AAA bond rating, and we took $800 million that had been locked up in urban renewal areas for the Portland Development Commission and put that value back on the tax rolls to benefit schools and public services at the city and the county. You know, I went to a really boring meeting on Tuesday. It was the meeting, and there are some members of this committee here, of our Police and Fire Retirement Fund Board. And we heard a long and fascinating report from our actuaries. Are you jealous yet? But they told us some things between those lines of numbers which are pretty important, and that is that this retirement fund is actuarially stable, and that the tax burden on our citizens is going down, and that the administrative cost is small and declining as a share of the whole enterprise. In Chicago, the pension debt is $18,000. The unfunded cost of that system is $18,000 for every man, woman, and child in Chicago. For Portland, that number is 0. There are a lot of mayors who would like to go to that boring meeting, and I'm glad I'm the one that gets to do that. So we did spend a lot of time in the last 2 years righting the ship, and now it's time to pilot the ship to where we as a community want to go. There were some major challenges in these first 2 years, and I want to list them, and as I do so, I'm listing a lot of solid successes for your team at City Hall. One was an attempted hostile takeover of our water and sewer systems, a well-funded campaign that tapped into legitimate concerns in our community about the stewardship of our utility dollars. But voters soundly and wisely rejected this, and we owe a debt of thanks to Commissioner Nick Fish. Nick, thank you very much for your leadership. We reinvested in parks. I'm so happy and proud of that 1994 measure. My kids and I, and Gavin's here today, went door to door for that measure, and it was a great moment for Portland. And so was last fall when our 2014 bond measure passed by a 72% margin, funding projects from Thomas Cully Park to Pioneer Courthouse Square to Powell Butte. Thank you, Amanda Fritz, for your passionate leadership. Third, Portlanders reinvested in our children's levy, again with a huge margin by a 74% approval, investing $11 million last year in academic success, preventing child abuse and neglect, and mitigating childhood hunger. Thank you, Dan Saltzman, for your leadership of our children's levy. Which brings me to everyone's all-time favorite subject, the street fund. Sam, it would be a good time now to lock the doors, please. Yeah, I know. We're all tired of talking about the street fund. I'm tired of asking people to face this problem for the last 14 years. Let me lay out what we've done recently, and I'll promise to do it briefly. Now, some of you might think that the first thing we did was ask for more money. No, the first thing we did was to dig down deep with the dollars we already have and pave more streets. We went from paving 30 miles a year to 100 miles a year with the money we already had. Good news, but we have 5,000 lane miles to take care of, and a lot of them are in poor and declining condition. We need to spend, by our Transportation Bureau's estimate, about $91 million more a year to take care of the streets we have and put them into proper repair. Now, we've tried several options, and there was opposition, understood. Taxes are not popular. Once upon a time, the federal government was a reliable partner in our work on transportation. Earl Blumenauer has been trying to raise the gas tax for years and to get Congress to get real about transportation funding. Congress should listen to this man. We hope this is the session when they finally do that and take this historic opportunity of amazing declines in gas prices to do the right thing and to listen to Earl Blumenauer. Earl, thank you for your leadership. Now, we put our own funding, local funding efforts on hold this month, responding to a request from our governor and our Speaker of the House to do that. And we think that the state legislature is a key partner in this work. Majority Leader Rosenbaum and a number of our state legislative delegation is here. Would you please stand and accept our thanks for being great legislators for Portland? We met with our Portland legislative delegation this week, and they're going to work hard to help solve this problem. But no matter what, action in Congress and action in Salem won't erase this problem. We hope it will diminish the size of the problem, but it won't erase it. And so we're not done talking about the street fund until we've done something. Remember how we don't have an unfunded pension liability? We do have an unfunded street liability. It's $1.5 billion. It amounts to $2,500 for every man, woman, and child in Portland. And it's getting bigger. It's growing by $12.5 million a month. Tick, tick, tick. $12.5 million more than last month. Now, we can ignore that. We could jeer at those people who are willing to face it or the proposals that they come up with, but it's still going up. Tick, 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 by $20.83 per person per month. For the past 2 years, the person who stood with me facing this issue has been Commissioner Steve Novick. Steve, thank you for your courage. There is an easy way out for all of us on this, which is do nothing. I'm not that guy. This is not that council. We're not that city. Together, we must get this done, and I believe we will. Another issue that we've focused on in the last couple of years has been police reform. Now, I started by telling you about the great progress that we've made to right the ship financially. I now get to tell you that we're making great progress in police reform. There's a principle here that I think we all believe in, that the police must be a force for community health and for justice, and that no law-abiding people should ever believe that they have a reason to fear the police. Yet too often this is not true for many people in our community, for people of color, or for people suffering from mental illness. Changing this reality in Portland is a sustaining passion of my administration. Here's an important distinction. We want to be safe, and we want to feel safe, and to feel safe when we interact with our police. Our police bureau is changing, and changing that interaction will result. Let me briefly explain why Portland is different from other cities on this issue. We have a clear path to improvement. We have a settlement agreement with the U.S. Department of Justice, and we have changed who we hire as police officers, how we promote them, how we train them, when they get to use force, and how we apply discipline when their actions are inappropriate. We've focused on police accountability and on that relationship building with the community. That starts with recruitment. 40% of our new hires in the last 5 years have been women and people of color. We've expanded our behavioral health unit, which assists people in mental health crisis. This progress is due to City Council leadership, to direction that I gave when I took over the Bureau, and our excellent command staff. But none of it would have happened in a police bureau that was completely unwilling to change. Now, you know, every day I get on this phone a report called the Daily Situation Report, and it tells what happened, usually overnight, in our police bureau. And I'll tell you, day after day, I see reports of de-escalating crises, of solving problems, of being humane, when our police officers are out there using the best tool they have, which is their compassion. Let me give you 2 examples. Officer Parak Singh. One day last winter, Officer Singh saw a homeless man barefoot in the cold. He gave the man his boots. Sports columnist John Canzano asked him, "Why did you give him his boots?" And Officer Singh said, "We're the same size," and he was cold. Officer Susan Billard last July was called to the Safeway on 122nd. A shoplifter had been caught with $6 worth of soup and rolls by the security guard for that store. His pregnant girlfriend hadn't eaten all day. That's why he did this. She was outside in the car in the parking lot crying. Rather than arrest that man, Officer Billard issued him a citation. And then she told the girlfriend, "Go fill up a cart of groceries and meet me at the front of the store." And then she paid for the groceries. Now, you won't necessarily read these stories in the headline, and they're not required by the Department of Justice settlement, but it is what our officers do day after day. So that's how we've addressed some of the challenges in our first 2 years in office, which leads to the state of our city today. Portland is healthy and getting stronger. Why do I say that? It's just some words in a City Club speech? No, you can look it up. This week, we introduced a dashboard on the city's website. This tracks metrics related to my priorities and to our community's priorities, like building livable neighborhoods and creating economic opportunity and improving public trust in law enforcement and in government in general. I don't quote Ronald Reagan very often, but trust but verify. Go check it out, portlandoregon.gov/dashboard. It's there. Over the next 2 years, we will focus on neighborhoods and economic opportunity and public safety. To address these, Portlanders need to know that we here in Portland rewrote the urban equation. What do I mean by that? 40 years ago, there was a conventional wisdom about cities in decline. Prosperity was leaking out to the suburbs, urban schools were deteriorating, parents with choices left the public schools and left the poor kids behind. We really understood that the races would never get along. Urban life was a lesser choice. Suburban flight was the norm. This was true nationally, and it was true here. There were a lot of parking lots in what we now call downtown Portland. Get this, as recently as 1990, there were 2,000 vacant and abandoned houses in North and Northeast Portland. There was a lot of talk about new freeways, even though in 1979, there were 115 days when Portland exceeded the federal air quality standard for smog. That was the urban equation. Nothing unusual here. But what did Portland do? We redeveloped the parking lots. We said no to more highways in the city. We invested in light rail and streetcars. Individual families and social entrepreneurs like community development corporations invested in great old houses and great old neighborhoods. We revitalized main streets in our neighborhoods from Hollywood to Hillsdale and from Multnomah to Montevilla and from Woodlawn to Woodstock. How did we become this livable city? We put our values into our actions and then created a lot of great partnerships. That's the Portland way. So naturally, my first priority for the coming 2 years is neighborhoods. We're working now on our comprehensive plan, the blueprint for the development of our city over the next couple of decades. Here's something I'm passionate about: keeping great neighborhoods great and extending the benefits of livable urbanism to more of our city neighborhoods. And here's what we must do to get there from here. Preserve neighborhood character. Work to preserve affordability so people won't be forced out of their historic neighborhoods. Tighten up the rules on demolition. Use this tool rarely and use it right. Have strong infill standards and design guidelines. We all know the nightmare scenario. The homeowner leaves town for the weekend, comes back, and the charming old house next door is a pile of rubble, and a few weeks later, there's a McMansion there. I'll recommend new rules on neighborhood infill that will widen the setbacks between houses, require that new homes more closely match the older ones that surround them in terms of size and volume, and make demolition a less attractive option. Neighborhood by neighborhood, we should take care of what we have and invest in the plans and hopes of Portland neighborhoods that they've established for themselves. Let me give you 3 examples of just that. First, Lents. After years of talk and millions of dollars of planning, we now have real projects in final negotiations with the Portland Development Commission and Lents. I'm going to take you on a walk through Lents 2 years from now. We'll go start at the Asian Health and Service Center at Foster and 91st, an intergenerational mixed-use project with a health clinic, a community center, and a Chinese immersion preschool, all just down the street from the Jade District. At 92nd, we'll see a town center that includes commercial, mixed-use, and residential projects for seniors and families. At Reedway and 91st, there's going to be an apartment building there called Woody Guthrie's Place, because he used to live in that part of Portland. Across the street, there's retail and an office project called Lents Exchange. The Lents Action Plan was created by the neighborhood. In 2 years, all 3 words will be true. It's about Lents, it's a plan, and finally, we'll have action. Take another walk for me in Old Town Chinatown. Howard Weiner, an amazing volunteer, the neighborhood president there, is finally retiring. He's almost irreplaceable, but there are a lot of other people working hard. And there are great things happening there. The old post office is becoming the Pacific Northwest College of Art. A historic building at Gleason and Park is going to be the Harlow Hotel. Ankrum Moyson Architects are going to build their headquarters on a parking lot, yes, next to the Oregon College of Oriental Medicine, and it's also going to have other offices and 60 or 70 residential units in it. This is critical mass, long-awaited critical mass for a neighborhood that's waited a long time. Now, from the Pacific Northwest College of Art to Portland State University, downtown Portland is going to shine as an example of how arts, education, and the new economy are a great recipe for a great city. I look forward to taking those walks with you. Let's take one more. Let's take a walk around an aspirational neighborhood, which the residents are now calling the Soul District. All along Martin Luther King Boulevard in the not very distant future, we'll see the results of a newly energized housing strategy, a new grocery store, smaller businesses owned by residents. This is all the work of community leaders who have a vision for development on MLK, a vision for supporting African-American owned businesses and promoting a cultural home on that great street. Now, what do these neighborhoods, Lentz, Old Town Chinatown, the Soul District, all have in common? In each case, the neighborhood had the plan. City Hall is there to assist. Just like the East Portland Action Plan that's winning applause around the country for its grassroots, up-from-the-bottom approach to designing its own future. That's the Portland way. Neighborhood plans, city support, and partnerships. In addition to neighborhoods, in the next 2 years, you'll see a sharp focus on economic opportunity for all Portlanders. Remember, 40 years ago, there was that conventional wisdom about urban life, a negative answer to the urban equation. Portland said, no, we chose a better way, the Portland way. So now let me talk about the human equation, because there's a new conventional wisdom, and it's this. We're in a deeply stratified society. The rich get richer, the poor stay poor. In the late 1960s, more than half of Americans were middle class, living in households with income of $35,000 to $100,000. In the 1970s, 80s, and 90s, the middle class shrank. Why? Because people were climbing up the economic ladder. But now, since 2000, the middle class has continued to shrink, not because people are climbing up, but because they're falling down into poverty. Here's a statistic in our state from the Oregon Center for Public Policy. There are 642,000 people in Oregon living in poverty, and in many cases in hunger as well. If poverty was a city, it would be bigger than Portland. Let's be honest about this as well. It's not an equal opportunity poverty. Issues of poverty are also issues of racial justice. I don't have to give you all the statistics. You know how underserved communities of color are in terms of employment and household income and education and healthcare and the criminal justice system. It's part of that conventional view that says when it comes to inequality, it was here before, it's here now, it'll always be here, there's nothing we can do about it locally. Sorry. But just like with the urban equation, I believe there's a better way, the Portland way. With the urban equation, we are proving that it's actually possible, that a city can be a national exception, ultimately an international exception, to the megatrends that were afflicting cities 30 or 40 years ago. I believe that Portland can continue to realize its promise as a livable city. As I said, though, we need to keep going because we have to make sure that all of our neighborhoods are livable. But I think we can do that work and begin shaping a different answer to the conventional wisdom about the human equation, making Portland a city of opportunity. City Hall won't accomplish this alone either. We're one partner among many. One partnership I'm very proud of is the Black Male Achievement Initiative. Members of the steering committee for this venture held a press conference on Monday to outline their goals and plans. They're working for tangible, quantifiable progress in areas like education, employment, and incarceration. Joyce Harris, an amazing community resource, looked at that line of men in front of her and said, I've never been more proud of the men in our community. I haven't either. There's some members of that group here today. Would you please stand? What sort of issues are these men taking on? Here's an example. One of the persistent factors holding people back is disproportionate discipline in our schools. Students who are expelled have a much tougher time of staying with their age group. They're less likely to graduate on time or go to college, and the numbers just simply call us to action. In 2013, 4% of white students in Portland Public Schools were suspended or expelled. 17% of black students were. All our school districts see consistent numbers about disproportionate discipline. African American boys and Native American boys are most affected, followed by Latino boys. And the disparities persist in high school and middle school and elementary school and all the way down to preschool. Disproportionate discipline is where racial injustice begins. Equality in education and in discipline is where opportunity begins. I'm not picking on Portland Public Schools here, by the way. They've had the guts to look at this challenge in the eye and set goals for this year to reduce expulsions by 50%, which requires getting a 60% decrease for African American boys. My thanks and commendations to Carol Smith, Lorenzo Poe, and the Black Male Achievement Initiative for making this a focus for their advocacy. Each of you is a force for positive change. Thank you. So what else can a city, our city, do about economic opportunity? Here's a passion of mine: living wages for city workers. This year, with Commissioner Salzman, thank you. It's a passion for a lot of us, including Dan Salzman, because this year we'll be proposing in my budget that all full-time permanent employees and contractors of the City of Portland make at least $15 an hour. It's the right thing to do. I met Khadra Ahmed when I was running for mayor. Khadra fled Somalia, spent 15 years in a refugee camp in Kenya before she resettled in the United States. She's a custodian who works at the Portland building and has for the last 7 years. She makes $13.50 an hour, and she has 7 children. Her husband drives a taxi, but he was injured in a car accident and isn't working right now. How would Khadra use a little more income? She'd pay the fees so her kids could play sports at their school, because right now they have to choose which of their children play sports and which don't. John Russell, a prominent local businessman, has just told me that he'll match the city's $15 per hour in his buildings, and I call on other civic-minded business leaders to match John Russell's example. When it comes to economic opportunity, what else can a city do, our city? How about this? For our minority-owned, women-owned businesses, let's improve our system for the City of Portland so that our contracts and good intentions lead to more actual opportunities. In the next couple of weeks, we'll be bringing an ordinance to Council to establish a new commission, the Commission on Equity, Contracting, and Purchasing. This will be a watchdog to make sure that companies aren't gaming the system, and will recommend more ways to increase minority participation on city contracts. Nobody in this city is more committed to creating a pathway to minority prosperity than James Posey, and I want to thank him and others like Tony Jones for working on these issues. Thank you, James. What are some other things we can do here in our city about economic opportunity? We can create programs to help ex-offenders, except I don't like to use that term. I like to call them returning citizens. Here's how it ought to work. If you break the law, you'll get convicted, and you'll serve your time. That's it. You should then return to your community. But right now, there are barriers that stop returning citizens from being successful. Last year, we as a city took action. We removed a major barrier for people seeking city employment because we banned the box. Proud of that. We took off of our applications a requirement that applicants disclose felony convictions before they ever get interviewed or even get a conditional job offer. Now, working with the Urban League, the AFL-CIO, the ACLU, and others, we're going to work to spread this good idea citywide. It's the right thing to do. We should go further than just banning the box. This year, I'll propose incentives for businesses that hire returning citizens, just like we do for veterans. Philadelphia does this, and they've had over 400 Philadelphians hired in their program. Their recidivism rate for those returning citizens is an amazing 7%. Now, here's how it'll work. The city will offer a tax credit of up to $5,000 for each ex-offender hired by any business in Portland for that year, for up to 2 years. We'll run it as a pilot program for 2 years and see how well it works. We'll take an initial group of 100 returning citizens and try this out. Let me read you a letter I received a couple of days ago. I've been trying to help my mother get in a position to find a job. My mother is an ex-offender who has a few felonies on her record that are over 20 years old, but they keep coming back on her when she tries to get a job. I just last week looked into paying a lawyer to have them expunged so that she can get to work. The person who wrote this letter is Mitchell Jackson, a Portlander whose amazing first novel, called The Residue Years, is a must-read for everyone who cares about Portland and about racial equity. Let's do this for Mitchell's mom and for every Portland resident who's stuck in the cycle of being an ex-offender. Let's clear the way for our returning citizens to participate as productive members in our community. Will this be expensive? Let me turn that question around. How will it compare with the billions of dollars that we as a country spend on prisons? No contest, it's a very good investment. To provide economic opportunity for everyone, our local economy has to be flexible, and we're adapting to the new sharing economy. We found a path forward for the legal use of short-term rentals like Airbnb. If you check out the front page of the Wall Street Journal today, you'll see that we're noticed for working with private nonprofit ride-sharing apps like Uber and Lyft. Now understand, we will do this only when we can ensure that these companies embrace our values that include public safety and equal access. And remember that Somali family that I mentioned, Kadra's husband, the taxi driver? We also need to make sure that they have the ability to make a living wage behind the wheel, because that's our priority too. I think that also is the Portland way. Finally, one more topic on the subject of economic opportunity: housing. In Portland, there are too many people that are lower income and are struggling to find a place to live. And we have too many people who are homeless. On any given night, there are 1,800 people living unsheltered on our streets. How'd they get there? There are 1,800 different stories. And there are a lot of people in this room who work with that community and know what I mean, and know that one solution doesn't fit all. But we have to keep trying to find ideas that work and take them to scale and do more of them. 3 examples. This week, City Council approved a $20 million investment in housing in North and Northeast Portland, on top of $16 million that had already been dedicated. $8 million going to permanently affordable rental homes, $5 million to help households purchase affordable homes, $4 million for repairs so that 240 families can stay in their homes, and $3 million to purchase land for future housing. Another example, Women into Housing Now. Last year, 282 people were helped by this program, women and their families, to find homes. 55% of those women were from communities of color. The third one, Home Start, which provides rent assistance and housing placement and support services for families and vulnerable adults who are experiencing homelessness. Last year, 989 people got help with permanent or transitional housing through this program, 58% from communities of color. Those are just 3 examples of what we're doing, and the city, once again, cannot act alone. The Portland way is to put our values into practice by building great partnerships. One of those partnerships is with Rob Justice and Dave Carbonneau, who plan to build 1,000 affordable units in 4 years. Not building Cadillac spaces, but building housing small, quickly, and well. We need these kinds of creative solutions because we need housing stock now. Now, despite all that effort, homelessness is still a persistent problem throughout our city, as it is throughout the nation. I encourage everyone to read Anna Griffin's excellent series of columns in the Oregonian on homelessness, because she lays out the challenge as well. I also encourage everyone to read the City Club's report on healthcare reform and homelessness that was released earlier this month. Since I came to office, every time we've had an opportunity to increase funding for the homeless, this City Council has done so. We increased funding in the 2013 budget, the 2013 fall budget adjustment, and the 2014 budget. And yet the problem persists. So what else can we do here, soon? Pick a component of this big, complex problem and tackle it with an effective partnership. Here's a good example: homelessness among veterans. Last November, the Veterans Administration challenged Portland and Multnomah County to house 100 vets by Veterans Day. Instead, we found housing for 139. I met one of them, a guy named Frederick Maxwell. He served our country and then lived for 5 years in his van. Today, he has a home for himself and his cat, who says runs his home. I can identify with that. More recently, the Home for Everyone Executive Committee considered a plan to find housing for all our homeless vets by the end of 2015. The Home for Everyone Executive Committee includes me and Commissioner Saltzman, Multnomah County Chair Deborah Kafoury, Commissioner Jules Bailey, Carolyn Eccles from Gresham, Michael Bonacor from Home Forward, Michael Parkhurst from Meyer Memorial Trust. This is the kind of example of city-county partnership that we'll see more of. I know we have a number of our county commissioners here, including Chair Kafoury. Let's recognize them for being great partners for the City of Portland. This is one of my first opportunities to partner with Chair Kafoury, and it won't be our last. And this group has made this commitment unanimously. We're going to house every last one of our homeless vets here in Portland by this next Veterans Day. It's the right thing to do. I've talked about neighborhoods and economic opportunity. Now let me turn to my third priority, public safety. Our city, again, is leading the way on police accountability. Here's an example. Last year, we reintroduced walking beats as a pilot project in Hawthorne and parts of downtown. From March through October, police contacted about 2,100 people on Hawthorne, resulting in 227 arrests, but also resulting in 1,300 offers of services. Arrests aren't the goal. Preventing crime is the goal. Serving the community is the goal. And credit goes to Assistant Chief Bob Day and Sergeant Rick DeLand. I got to go out with these officers and their team as they walked their beat on Hawthorne. I spoke to the shopkeepers, I spoke to the street roots vendors, I spoke with a young homeless man named Trevor, and he said, I travel to a lot of cities. Portland's the only one where I know the names of the officers, and they know me. Trevor gave me this amulet. He said he sensed good energy from the police and from me. I'm going to kind of keep that amulet. And try to keep earning that trust. Now, the Hawthorne merchants praised these beats, the neighbors love them, even our houseless communities and their advocates praise these walking beats. Israel Byer of Street Roots says it should be a national model for how to interact with the homeless, and he doesn't dispense that kind of praise often. Dennis Lundberg of Janus Youth said of Sergeant DeLand's team, it's like having a whole other team of street outreach people out there working with us. We've run 2 pilot programs, we've measured their success. This is what community policing looks like. Expect to see more of it. Sergeant DeLand, thank you. Police Chief Larry O'Day and I both believe in investing ourselves in a relationship with our citizens. In city after city, communities are facing protests now over officer-involved shootings. From Ferguson to New York, our nation has been roiled by this issue, and we're no exception. I'm committed to listening, to having real dialogue with protesters and concerned citizens, because they have legitimate concerns. I've met with the faith community. I've sat on stage at Roosevelt High School taking questions from students who are angry at the police. I've held 2 meetings so far with Don't Shoot Portland, and 5 more are planned. Thank you, Teresa, for your leadership and your help. I've held 2 meetings so far with Don't Shoot Portland, and I will keep this conversation going. Yes, let's hear it for Teresa Rayford. Where'd she go? I want to thank Chief O'Day for making this relationship with the community his top priority, and he has a command staff who have the same values. Here's my advice to everybody. Get to know Larry O'Day, get to know this command staff. These are the right people at the right time in the leadership of the Portland Police Bureau. Please stand. Thank you all for your service. Another major factor in public safety is the illegal use of guns. I believe, and Portlanders believe, in universal background checks for all gun sales. Now, you know, I could stand here and cite statistics on gun violence all afternoon. Let me just give you a couple. Firearm homicide is the second leading cause of death after motor vehicle crashes for our young people. An average of 8 children and youths under the age of 20 are killed by guns in America every day. Every day. Why do I mention youths injured or killed by guns? Well, let me tell you, there's some wonderful and there's some terrible things that I get to do as your mayor. And one of the worst was going to Emmanuel Hospital to visit 3 wounded high school students, including one of them, LeBray Franklin, who had worked as an intern in my office. And that was hard. And LeBray sat there, or laid there, actually, in that hospital bed, and said over and over, "This is so messed up." You're right, LeBray. We know that. So do our state legislators who are here, because they're committed, as we are, to making this change. I testified at the 2013 legislature. I'll go back again whenever you ask me to be there. Senator Jenny Burdick isn't here, but I think she's listening in, and we know how hard she's worked and the threats she's faced. Together, this legislature and this community will do the right thing for LeBray and everyone at risk of gun violence. This is the session. Finally, the most intractable issue around public safety, how to help our residents who are suffering with mental illness. The nation's failing mental health system fails us all. It undermines our schools, it contributes to homelessness, it creates a system of police as first responders. We see this problem in Portland and every city. In 2013, Portland police transported 1,100 people to emergency rooms. Wrong vehicles, wrong destination. An estimated 40% of the inmates in Multnomah County's jails are diagnosed with mental illness. I firmly believe that the police should not be the first responders in mental health crises, but if they are, we're committed to making sure they have the right training for the task. That's why we've increased the capacity of that behavioral health unit within the Police Bureau, adding a mobile crisis team for each of our 3 precincts. You should see, again, these reports that I get on this phone, day after day, week after week. Our police are serving as first responders to people in mental health crisis as a just normal part of their routine. Let me give you one example. It was from last September. This is the story of Denoris McClendon, a man who was suffering with mental illness. On August 30th of last year, the police received a report of a man acting strangely in public. Officers found him and they drove him home. Half an hour later, his grandmother called because he'd become agitated, and police met him again. On August 31st, his grandmother called again. Mr. McClendon was suffering from paranoid delusions. He was out in the backyard swinging a dowel rod at the bushes, looking for the FBI. Some days before this, he'd broken both his arms, and although they hadn't healed, he'd removed the casts and stitches himself. Someday soon, Denoris will be in a better place, but that wasn't that day. Project Respond was called in, and Mr. McClendon was taken to the hospital, but he was released in the middle of the night. When Labor Day dawned the next day, the police received a report of a man waving guns at cars at the intersection of I-84 and I-205, one of the busiest intersections in our highway system, on Labor Day. There was a man walking between cars, waving this gun, pointing it at people as they're coming home from their weekend. So there was a massive police and medical response. This unidentified man, you know where I'm going with this, of course, was Denoris McClendon. This situation could have had a horrifying death toll right out there on the highway, but it didn't. Police didn't fire at him. They stayed back and they worked to isolate him from other drivers. He eventually left the freeway and moved towards a residential neighborhood. Now the police believe they had no choice. They shot him and wounded him and arrested him before he could reach neighborhood homes. Now I tell you this story not to vilify Mr. McClendon, nor the police. I tell you this story because at every step, our community has failed Denoris McClendon. What can we do about it? For one thing, we can create one or more psychiatric emergency services center here in Portland. As I said before, we do things through partnerships, and this is an essential one, where we work with Multnomah County and the legislature and community care organizations and hospitals. And next year, I want to come before you and say we've opened it. We've opened our first psychiatric emergency center. We'll do this for Denoris McClendon. We'll do this for his grandmother. We'll do this for every family afflicted by mental health crises, and for every police officer who's forced to serve as a first responder in mental health crises. And we'll do it because it's the Portland way to create innovative local solutions to intractable national problems, thus making our citizens' lives better. I started off by telling you how we spent 2 years righting the ship and how we spent the next 2 years steering the ship towards the future that we all want, with our shared hopes for neighborhoods and economic opportunity and public safety. I've laid out some ambitious goals for our administration and for the city, whether it's for the betterment of our police bureau and the communities they serve, whether it's for our students, for people of color, for neighbors and neighborhoods, for women and minority entrepreneurs, for people in poverty and our middle class, for black male achievement, for our community's workforce, for returning citizens, for the houseless, and for those Portlanders living with mental illness. I think we will find the Portland way to meet these challenges. We here rewrote the urban equation. We did it for us, and then other cities are now trying very hard to be more like Portland. Our challenge now is to rewrite the human equation, the same reason, for us, to do for the people of Portland as we have done for the place of Portland. Can we do this? Can we be a city that does all this, a city that strives for liberty for all, livability for all, opportunity for all, justice for all? In this place, can we, in our own Portland way, actually make a difference? I think so. After all, we have a history of being different. We're Portland. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mayor Hales. We will now take questions from the floor. As always, we invite members to the microphone to ask their question. Asking questions at Friday Forum microphone is a benefit of City Club membership, and membership is open to everyone. Before asking your question, identify yourself as a City Club member or a Civic Scholar today. Please ask only one question and ask your question as succinctly as possible. If I flash this question mark, it means please wrap up your question.
Hello, Mr. Hales. I'm a Park Row Civic Scholar. I know you addressed this in your speech, but my question was, what more do you believe can be done to address the loss of diversity and affordable housing in Northeast Portland caused by gentrification?
The strategies I mentioned, I think, will make a difference, but again, I want to stress the partnership point. A lot of what has worked in our community has come out of the community. Those aren't just fatuous words from a politician. I've seen it on both sides. I was a board member for Reach Community Development and for HOST, which stood for Home Ownership a Street at a Time. Nobody in the city thought of that. It came up out of the community. Pioneer Courthouse Square came up out of the community. So I think a big part of our job in City Hall is to recognize good ideas and then partner with them. So we've put some on the table, and we've put some money on the table, though we know it's not enough. Some other things we can do in this better economy, we can have inclusionary zoning in this city, which we don't now have. So thank you, and keep giving us your ideas.
Hello. My question is, what is your view on the education system, and are you going to change anything about it?
My view of the education system, having been both a parent and an activist and now a civic leader, is that we've made a lot of progress in Portland. If you look at what Charlene Williams accomplished in the Roosevelt cluster with a little extra resources and support from her district, you can see how much improvement is possible. Park Rose, same thing, great progress. David Douglas, the biggest and most diverse high school in the state, and yet real academic improvement and improvement in graduation rates. So we've got a long way to go. We've only got a 72% overall graduation rate in the city, and it's worse than that by far among students of color. But we've made a lot of progress. So what the legislature did in 2013 is they put a substantial floor under local education. It had been so uncertain before that. And they deserve our thanks and our pressure to keep up that level of funding and better it this year. Another thing I really passionately believe in is getting upstream. If you look at the Earl Boyles Learning Center in David Douglas, or some of the other examples like SEI of what we do for kids before they get to school, you see how well we can change that trajectory. If we have preschool that works, we have students that succeed. It works.
Good afternoon, Mayor Hill. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here. My name is Crystal Gonzalez Perez. I am a senior at Park Rose High School, and my question for you today is, what other steps can Portland take to provide a safe environment for the undocumented immigrants and their families after Measure 88 was not passed?
Well, we are in the right place as a city council on that. I'm very proud that yesterday our city council approved our participation in the fight at the national level in court to defend President Obama's executive actions, because he's doing the right things for immigrants in our country. Another thing that some other cities are doing that I think we should take a look at, it's a lot of work. It can't be done with a soundbite. It requires, again, a lot of partners in other governments and in the private sector, is to have a city ID card, because there's some undocumented people who can't get any services because they have no way to formally identify themselves. New York's done this, San Francisco's done this, and I think we should consider it.
Is that it? Okay. Well, we have run out of broadcast time for further questions, and we'll have to stop for the day. As we close, please join me once again in offering our sincerest thanks to Friday Forum Committee member Bobby Reagan, who produced today's event, and of course, Mayor Charlie Hales.